Everyone keeps telling you the same equation. Work more, earn more. So you picked up the Saturday shift again. Third week running. 40 extra hours this month. Same $19.75 an hour. Same dead legs by Sunday night. Nobody mentions the other equation. The one that doesn't need your Saturdays at all. It's sitting in your banking app right now, doing nothing, worth more while you sleep than the shift you just worked. By the end of tonight, you'll understand exactly why. And by the time you get to the fireproof box in your father's garage, you'll understand why that number mattered more than any of the raises you spent 5 years waiting for. The net worth shift by 10 a.m. You're back at your desk at the insurance office off Peachtree Industrial. Headset looped around your neck, and data from claims spins her monitor around to show you her lease. A 2026 BMW X3. $549 a month. 36 months. Nothing down. I just felt like I deserved it, she says. You nod because you know exactly what that sentence costs to say out loud, and exactly what it costs to actually mean. You make $58,000 a year. Deja makes about the same. Same hours, same breakroom coffee, same 3% raise letter every January. And still, somehow, one signature on a lease makes it look like she's ahead of you. Back at your desk, you open your banking app again. Except this time, you don't close it after the checking balance loads. You keep scrolling. Savings, $340. The 401k you started 18 months ago, matched at 4%. $2,100. No IRA. Nothing else. You add it up badly in your head, then again on the calculator, and land on something just under $2,500. That number sits differently than your paycheck does. Your paycheck passes through you. It shows up, it leaves, it goes to rent and gas, and the groceries you already forgot buying. This number is what's left after everything else already took its cut. This is what you actually keep. You think about Deja's X3 again, except now you're doing different math. Her lease is $549 a month for something worth less every day she drives it. Your 401k contribution is $180 a month, automatic, invisible. The only bill you have that makes you richer for paying it. Nobody spins their monitor around to show you a retirement balance. But one of those numbers compounds, and the other one depreciates the second it leaves the lot. You're barely participating in your own plan, but for the first time, participating feels like the entire game. And the lease payment starts looking like a costume. That's what you're not supposed to notice. That's next. Killing the debt. The statement's been sitting in your inbox for 3 weeks, subject line gone gray with age. You finally open it on your couch Sunday night, laptop balance on your knees, a bowl of reheated rice going cold beside you. Chase Freedom Unlimited. Balance, $6,190. A PR, 23.99%. Minimum due, $154. You know this number. You built it slowly, the way most people do. A security deposit you didn't have cash for. A root canal in February. A flight home for your cousin's wedding you put on the card because the alternative was not going. None of it felt reckless at the time. It felt like living. Your neighbor down the hall, Marcus, a paralegal who works nights, mentioned once that he just pays the minimum and doesn't think about it. It's like $150 a month, he said, leaning against the mailboxes. That's nothing. You nodded then. Tonight, you actually do the math he never did. At 23.99%, paying only the minimum. That $6,190 takes you past 9 years to clear. You'd pay more than $6,700 in interest, more than the debt itself, for the privilege of not thinking about it sooner. You think about the $180 a month growing quietly in the background, untouched. This card is the same mechanism running in reverse. Same compounding, except instead of building something, it's dismantling something one billing cycle at a time. Marcus's It's Nothing is actually a 9-year sentence with $6,700 in fees attached. $6,190 divided by 18 months is $344. Not comfortable. That's canceling a subscription. That's brown bagging lunch instead of DoorDash. That's saying no to Dacia's cousin's wedding, the one in Savannah, that you can already feel yourself dreading declining. But 18 months at that pace cost you $1,290 in interest instead of $6,700. You write $344 on a Post-it and stick it to your laptop. Not as motivation, just as a fact. There's a version of tonight where you close the laptop and let the minimum payment keep doing what it's been doing. Nobody would know. The card would keep working at checkout, the number growing somewhere you'd trained yourself not to look. Instead, you set the autopay for Friday. Watch the confirmation load. Feel something closer to dread than relief, because $344 a month is real money, leaving a paycheck that was already tight before you started tracking any of it. which is exactly why the cash you don't have yet is about to matter more than it ever has. The 6-month wall. 3 weeks into the $344 autopay, your car answers a question you didn't ask. The check engine light on your Civic stops blinking and just stays on. Solid. 2 days later, it won't start in the office parking lot at 5:51 p.m., the lot already half empty. The sky going that flat gray-orange it gets in late October. The tow truck driver, a guy named Odell, who's been doing this for 11 years and tells you so without being asked, drops the car at a shop off Cobb Parkway. Diagnosis the next morning. Alternator, plus a serpentine belt that was already living on borrowed time. $598. Due before they'll release the car. You have $340 in savings. You had $340 3 weeks ago too, before you started throwing every spare dollar at the Chase card. And you haven't added to it since, because the card felt more urgent. Sitting in the shop's waiting room, a Keurig hissing in the corner, you do the math you should have done a month ago. $598 minus $340 is $258 you don't have. The nearest version of that money is the same card you just spent 3 weeks trying to shrink. This is the moment it stops being abstract. All that talk about interest rates and compounding was true, but it was also theoretical. A number on a screen you could close. This is a car that won't start and a shop that wants cash before 5. Your coworker, Simone, who processes claims 2 desks down, mentioned once that she keeps 4 months of expenses in a savings account she never touches. Boring on purpose, she called it. You'd nodded politely and filed it under things responsible people do. Now, walking out with a fixed alternator and a slightly heavier balance on a card you just started paying down, it doesn't sound boring anymore. It sounds like the difference between a bad Tuesday and a bad year. We're at the halfway point of this now. The wall, the debt, the race still ahead of you. And this is usually where the story would just keep listing numbers until you stop absorbing any of them. So here's the one number that actually matters before we keep going. Your monthly expenses land around $2,050. 6 months of that is $12,300. A number so far from your current $340, it should feel impossible. For a second, it does, but you're not building it this week. You're building the first $100 of it this Friday. The same way $344 became real by just picking a number and setting a date. You open a separate account that night before you can talk yourself out of it and move $50 into it. Money you don't technically have room for. You move it anyway. It isn't the wall yet. It's the first brick. Somewhere underneath all of this, though, is a quieter question. Not what happens when the car breaks. What happens to what you're worth per hour when nothing breaks at all? The earning engine. Monday morning, your manager Todd pulls you into the conference room with the broken blinds and tells you, almost apologetically, that this year's raise is 3%. Same number as last year. Same number as the year before that. $58,000 becomes $59,740. You do the math before you're back at your desk. After taxes, that's about $40 extra a month, less than what you're already sending to the alternator fund. Something Simone said weeks ago comes back to you. She'd mentioned, almost in passing, that she picked up freelance claims documentation for a small firm in Macon, remote, a few hours a week, using the exact same software skills she uses at the office all day. It's not extra work, she'd said. It's the same work, just not capped by what Todd decides I'm worth. Your salary has a ceiling built into it, a percentage Todd doesn't even set alone. But the actual skill, reading a file fast, writing it up clean, catching what gets missed, that doesn't have Todd's ceiling on it. It only has whatever ceiling you put on it yourself. That night, you open your laptop not to check your balance, but to build a profile on a freelance platform. You list the 2 systems you know cold and forget about it for 4 days, until a message comes through from a small independent adjusting firm in Ohio. 15 files, $22 an hour, evenings only. It's not a lot. It's a few $100s over 2 weeks. Done in the 90 minutes after dinner you used to spend scrolling. But it's money with no ceiling attached. No Todd, no 3%. By the end of the month between the raise and the freelance files, you've added $340 to what used to just be a salary. And for the first time, that second number came from something Todd never touched, which raises a different question than the one about hourly worth. Whether the safest place to put that extra money is even the safe place at all. Ownership bet. The message from Ohio turns into a real offer 6 weeks later. Not more files, a full role at a startup called Fieldstone Claims. 4 people, no office, building software to automate the exact work you've been doing by hand for 2 years. The founder, a former adjuster named Marisol Vega, offers you $52,000, less than you make now, plus 0.75% equity, vesting over 4 years. You slide your phone across the table to Simone at lunch, like it might bite her. She reads it twice. "That's a pay cut," she says, which is the same thing you already knew. The thing that's been keeping you up since Tuesday. Marisol's own boss left a stable adjusting job for something almost exactly like this 6 years ago. Last spring, that company sold. Marisol mentioned it once, offhand. Her old boss closed out with just under $4 million and bought a place on Lake Lanier, the kind of listing you scroll past on Zillow at midnight without meaning to. You don't know if Fieldstone becomes that. Nobody does. That's the entire point. Nobody explains this part clearly. An asymmetric bet isn't a guess dressed up as confidence. It's a trade where you can name your downside in advance. Here, the downside is $7,740 a year in lost salary. The exact gap between what you make now and what Marisol's offering. Times 4 years. If the equity never vests into anything, that's a number you can survive. It's a bruise, not a break. The upside has no ceiling, because equity doesn't work the way a paycheck does. Todd's 3% was capped the second it was announced. Marisol's 0.75% isn't capped by anything except how big Fieldstone gets. And if it gets anywhere close to what her old company did, 0.75% of a number in the millions changes which decade you retire in. You do a kind of math you've never done before. 5 times your annual expenses invested is the number where compound growth alone can carry you the rest of the way. No more dollars required from you. Simone once called it coast, half joking, the way people joke about things they actually want. At $2,050 a month, that number is $123,000. You are nowhere near it. But for the first time, you can see the shape of a path where equity, not another 3% raise, closes that gap in years instead of decades. You think about the Civic, the alternator, the $344 still leaving your account for the Chase card every month. None of that disappears if you take this job. The bet doesn't erase the ground you're standing on. It just changes what you're standing on it for. You type the acceptance email at 11:42 p.m., read it twice, hit send before you can talk yourself back into safety. Not because you're certain, but because you finally understand certainty was never actually on the table. Not in the safe job either. Todd's ceiling was never guaranteed to hold for 10 more years. It just felt that way because nothing had tested it yet. Here's the part almost nobody says out loud about money like this. The loud version of getting ahead needs an audience to feel real. A monitor spun around, a lease you can announce out loud in a break room. The quiet version doesn't need anyone in the room at all. It just needs the numbers to be true whether or not anyone's watching. Building the fortress. 5 months into Fieldstone, you're in the passenger seat of Marisol's Outback, driving back from a client meeting in Macon when her phone lights up on the dash. Her father. She lets it go to voicemail, then exhales in a way that says more than the call would have. "He's 70 in March," she says. "Not really to you. I still haven't asked him where the will is." You don't say anything at first because you're thinking about your own father. 66, still working, still the guy who changes his own oil and won't talk about money with anyone. Somewhere on the highway with the fields going by, you realize you don't know where his will is either. You don't know if he has one. That night you open your laptop, and instead of the freelance dashboard or the autopay screen, you're looking at something you've never needed before. Term life quotes. Not because anything happened, because for the first time, something depends on you existing. Your mother, 5 years from her own retirement, quietly counting on you not needing her help, and maybe someday being able to offer some back. Between Fieldstone and what's left of the freelance work, you make about $61,000. The number the insurance sites keep repeating is 10 to 12 times income, somewhere between $610,000 and $732,000 in coverage. A 20-year term policy runs about $27 a month, less than the monitor you bought yourself 2 months ago. $27 a month is the price of making sure a bad day doesn't become a second tragedy for somebody who loves you. You think about Marisol's father and the will nobody's asked about, and open a new tab. A basic will, through an online service, runs under $200. One afternoon of answering questions about who gets what, who you'd trust with decisions if you couldn't make them yourself. You don't have much yet. No house, no listing on Lake Lanier, but you have a 401k, a growing brokerage account, equity vesting slowly in the background, and a Civic that's finally, mercifully, running clean. Somebody should know what happens to all of it. You call your dad that Sunday, not about money exactly. More circling it, the way these conversations always start. He deflects twice. The third time, you just ask, "Where's the paperwork? Is there a will? Who's the contact if something happens?" He goes quiet for a second. Then, "It's in the fireproof box in the garage." Something in his voice sounds relieved that you asked before he had to bring it up first. You hang up and sit at your kitchen table. The city outside doing whatever it does on a Sunday night. Nothing about that call felt like winning. It felt like maintenance. The unglamorous kind. The kind nobody screenshots. But maintenance is what keeps a fortress standing after it's built. And somewhere between the alternator, the equity, and the fireproof box in your father's garage, you stopped being the person spinning her own monitor around, or the person watching someone else spin hers. Not because the numbers got easy, because you finally know which ones are worth carrying. You still check the account most mornings, but you're not bracing for it anymore. The dread used to arrive before the app even loaded. Now it's just a habit. The way Marisol checks the weather before a drive. On the fridge, under a magnet from a pizza place that closed 2 years ago, there's a small stack of Post-its nobody else has ever noticed. $344, $50, $27. Numbers that stopped being threats the second you wrote them down and did something about them instead of just feeling them. The Civic still ticks a little on cold mornings. The equity still has invested. Tuesday will still ask something of you that Monday didn't finish paying for, but you're not doing the math to survive it anymore. You're doing it because you finally know what you're protecting. What's still sitting in your banking app tonight, doing nothing, that you haven't actually looked at yet.